Before we begin, please be advised that the material you are about to hear may be inappropriate or disturbing for some viewers. Viewer discretion is strongly advised. The content presented has not been exaggerated or taken out of context. It reflects the actual statements made by the prosecution, defense, and Capricorn Clark on May 27, 2025. Some portions have been censored to comply with YouTube's guidelines. You will hear a narrated summary of Capricorn Clark's testimony from the trial of Sean Diddy Combs. Source: Courtroom Reporter, Inner City Press, X.com. All parties involved are presumed innocent until proven guilty in a court of law. Proceed with caution. The jury enters the courtroom. The judge welcomes everyone back and asks the prosecution to call their next witness. Capricorn Clark steps forward and takes the stand. When asked where he grew up, Clark shares that he was born in San Francisco and later moved to Los Angeles. He recalls working in the music industry, first at Def Jam, then at Death Row Records, a prominent and controversial label in the late 1990s. The prosecutor questions him about his connection to Suge Knight. Clark explains that Suge is the father of a friend's child. The attention then shifts to Sean Combs. Clark confirms he worked for Mr. Combs from 2004 to 2012. When asked directly whether he was ever held against his will, Clark answers simply, "Yes." He goes on to explain that he met Mr. Combs after moving to New York City in 2002. They became, in his words, super platonic friends. A headhunter later suggested he work for Mr. Combs as a personal assistant, and he did, until 2006. His duties included staying by Mr. Combs' side throughout the day. After that role, Clark became head of women's fashion at the Sean Jean brand. He was later promoted to global brand director, where he handled image rights and brand development. Clark notes that he was let go but returned in 2016 to assist on a project involving Cassandra Ventura. As the questioning continues, Clark confirms that in 2005 their company relocated to a new office building. On his first day there, Mr. Combs took him, at night, to Central Park, along with a man referred to as Uncle Paulie. Clark describes Paulie as having the stature of a professional athlete. Clark then recounts that during this meeting in the park, Mr. Combs told him something serious, relating to Clark's past work with Suge Knight. Clark says he took the statement very seriously, though he assured Mr. Combs he had nothing to do with any problematic matters. The prosecutor follows up with questions about Uncle Paulie's role. Clark says Paulie was in charge of all aspects of Mr. Combs' security, managing his movements to keep him safe. He also names other individuals involved in protection: D-Rock, Roger Bonds, and Ruben. When asked if he ever saw Mr. Combs with a dangerous item, Clark replies, "Yes, in my home." He adds that Mr. Combs had once told music executive Chris Lighty that he had such an item, reportedly due to tensions with another artist. The chapter ends with a question about a past accusation. Clark admits he was once accused of taking jewelry. He says the items had been loaned to him, but they went missing. When asked if they were indeed lost, he confirms, "Yes." Capricorn Clark continues recounting what happened after a tense 5-day period. He was eventually told he could return to work and that Mr. Combs would meet with him the following week. When asked if they ever directly spoke about what had happened, Clark responds, "No." So why did he continue working for Combs? His answer is clear. "If I left, they'd think I stole." The prosecutor then asks what Clark's typical workday looked like. He explains he'd start at Mr. Combs' townhouse on 74th and Park in the morning and finish at the Daddy's House studio at night. Sleep was minimal, 4 hours on a good day. He developed a stress-related condition and was paid $55,000 a year. When asked if he received any overtime pay, Clark says no. He had spoken to HR, who told him he was owed $80,000. Mr. Combs' reaction? According to Clark, he tore up the paperwork. Questions shifted to Combs' travel. Clark confirms that Combs would stay in hotels regularly, often accompanied by Kim Porter, about once a week. The testimony then takes a darker turn. Clark describes an incident where Uncle Paulie took him to 1710 Broadway, a building that was in poor condition at the time. They went up to the 6th floor, the door locked behind them. Inside was a 6-foot folding table and a large man. The prosecutor asks for a description of this man. Clark replies, 5 of me, 2 linebackers, he was chain-smoking. Uncle Paulie left and returned periodically. Clark was informed that he was there to take a lie detector test. When asked what would happen if he failed, Clark recalls being told, "They'd throw me in the East River." At this point, the defense objected and the court called for a sidebar. The judge then allowed the prosecutor to proceed. Clark describes the experience as very serious. He says he was terrified. He did not want to take the test, but he was afraid to say no. The test involved being wired up and asked intense questions, including, "Did I steal?" after the test. Clark says the man told him to calm down, that the results were unclear, and again repeated the threat about the East River. Clark did not recall seeing anyone else in the building. When asked if he could leave, he said, "No." Paul said no. The next day, Paul reportedly returned and said they'd try again. Clark underwent another lie detector session. All day, same location. When asked if he was free to leave, he once again answered, "No." The entire ordeal, according to Clark, lasted 5 days. The prosecutor asks if Clark told anyone where he was. He responds, "No, I was just trying to survive it." Before he could continue, the defense objected, and the judge instructed the jury to disregard the comment. Finally, when asked what he would have been doing otherwise, Clark answers, "Shadowing Mr. Combs." As the courtroom reconvened, Capricorn Clark was asked more pointed questions by the prosecution. When asked about certain substances, Clark stated that Mr. Combs claimed they were not for him. However, Clark admitted that he did, in fact, retrieve them, often through a Spanish-speaking security guard. He explained that prescription items were also picked up in his name and kept in a toiletry bag he carried or handed to security. Next came questions about large sums of cash. Clark confirmed, handling around 100,000 euros after trips from Europe. According to him, this money came from club appearances. Mr. Combs would hold on to the funds, pass them to security, and eventually lock them in a personal safe in his bedroom. When asked about aggressive behavior, Clark stated that there were instances of physical confrontations. He recalled being told not to leave a residence on Star Island. Notably, he mentioned that Pharrell Williams had once been brought to that location by boat. On one occasion, when Clark left to take someone back to Palm Island, he received a heated call demanding to know where he was. Clark then described a moment when he asked the chef for turkey bacon and was told there was none, using strong language. Clark responded by saying he hated the environment. According to him, the chef repeated this to Mr. Combs, who allegedly pushed him multiple times and told him to leave if he disliked it so much. The prosecution then inquired about hotel stays. Clark said Mr. Combs would book under aliases like Frank Black and Frank White. Female companions used names such as Jackie Starr. Frequent stays included the Intercontinental in Atlanta and the Beverly Hills Hotel in Los Angeles. When asked about the contents of Mr. Combs' bags, Clark listed cameras, small bottles of oil, and other personal items, always present, he noted. While Mr. Combs was occupied, Clark said he would stay in the room, order food, rest when possible, and then inspect the room afterward. Any damage? Clark pointed to one recurring item: the oil. The prosecution shifted to questions about Mr. Combs' relationship with Cassandra Ventura around 2008. Clark claimed that Mr. Combs stayed in hotels with her weekly. Locations included L'Hermitage, the London, and other luxury hotels. He mentioned that during these visits, IV drips were often involved. When asked about the nature of their relationship, Clark recounted a moment in which Mr. Combs directed Ms. Ventura to retrieve something from another room. She complied, and Mr. Combs reportedly made a dismissive comment toward others present. The discussion returned to the subject of substances. Clark admitted to seeing Mr. Combs receive deliveries through others, including a girlfriend in New York and another source in Los Angeles. He stated that he had also been personally asked to obtain certain items. Specifically, he named one by type. Finally, when asked about an incident in the south of France, Clark said he was asked again to procure something, to which he responded, with hesitation, highlighting that he did not want to do it because of how his mother had passed. This led to another objection from the defense and a request for a sidebar. As questioning continued, Capricorn Clark was asked about an incident involving a visit to a house in the Hollywood Hills. He confirmed it took about 15 to 20 minutes to drive there. When asked what Mr. Combs and a man named Rube did upon arrival, Clark said they entered the home, and yes, he could see inside. The topic then shifted to Clark's employment history. He acknowledged that he had once left his position, but later returned as global brand director. According to Clark, he was invited back due to the work he'd done in the meantime. He was told he wouldn't have to work under Mr. Combs directly. For a time, he worked on managing Ms. Cassandra Ventura's public image, ensuring everything reflected positively on her. Still, final approval on all matters reportedly belonged to Mr. Combs. While in Los Angeles, Clark lived in a gated community. Following Kim Porter's move there, the prosecution then asked about Ms. Ventura's whereabouts. Clark said she was based in New York City at the time, but would often stay with Mr. Combs, with him, or in hotels when in LA. He revealed that she had also been seeing someone else, Scott Mescudi, also known as Cootie. Clark learned this when she brought Cootie to his apartment. He later received a message from Ms. Ventura about a public outing she planned with Cootie in Los Angeles. Clark warned her that it was a bad idea and advised her to delete the message, since both of their phones were reportedly paid for by Mr. Combs. Concerned about the potential fallout, Clark helped her purchase a different phone. Not long after, Mr. Combs returned to town and took Cassie to a hotel. The next day, around 5:30 or 6 in the morning, there was loud banging at Clark's door. Peering through the peephole, Clark says he saw a very angry Mr. Combs. When questioned about his movements, Clark said he was pacing and holding something in his hand. He opened the door. Inside, Mr. Combs was reportedly wearing a sweater and torn pants. According to Clark, he was holding a weapon. Mr. Combs entered the apartment, demanding to know who Scott was. Clark denied knowing anyone by that name. What followed was a chilling statement. Mr. Combs allegedly expressed an intention to harm someone, using threatening language that alarmed Clark. When asked about the weapon, Clark confirmed it was in Mr. Combs' hand. He told him he didn't want to go anywhere, but Mr. Combs ordered him to get dressed, dismissing any hesitation. Clark said he complied, feeling uncomfortable that Mr. Combs had never come to his residence before. Clark was then asked who else joined them. He mentioned Ruben, who was already in a black Escalade, executive class. Ruben was driving. Clark sat in the back seat, while Mr. Combs sat next to him on the left, holding the weapon in his lap. As the situation continued to unfold, Capricorn Clark was asked who he called next. He testified that he contacted Regina Ventura and told her that her daughter was in serious danger. He admitted he didn't call the police, explaining that the mission of the day was to confront someone, so involving law enforcement wasn't an option at the time. Clark then called Cassie on her separate phone and warned her that Sean Combs was at another individual's house. To protect her, he changed her contact name in his phone to Stormy. Later, Clark said he overheard that Scott, referring to Scott Mescudi, was with Cassie. When Mr. Combs returned, he allegedly took Clark's phone, called the last number, and then, upon seeing Scott arrive, made a threatening statement. They drove away and passed police cars heading toward the house they had just left. According to Clark, Combs was visibly emotional. They stopped at a venue called the Key Club, where Clark was instructed to call Cassie and tell her that he was being held and not allowed to leave. When asked how Cassie responded, Clark recalled she was surprisingly calm and told him to come pick her up. Ruben drove him home, and Clark was then tasked with convincing Scott not to tell anyone who had visited his house. The objective was to keep the situation quiet. Clark and others went to speak with Scott, trying to dissuade him from going to the police. He told them that Combs had come to his house with a weapon, and that if anyone talked, there could be consequences. When asked how Scott reacted, Clark said he was visibly shocked, though the judge later instructed the jury to disregard that remark. The testimony took another disturbing turn as Clark described what happened next. Combs reportedly physically attacked Cassie again. Clark stated she was in a fetal position, silent and crying, as Combs kicked her from inside the house toward the street. When asked where she was struck, he said her back and lower body. He and Ruben were standing just a few feet away. Clark said that when he tried to intervene, Combs threatened him as well. Ruben reportedly remained still. In desperation, Clark called D-Rock and told him to get his brother to stop what was happening. He also called Paulie, who claimed he would handle it, but nothing changed. Eventually, Clark said Combs ordered him to leave too. He walked away on foot and could still see what was happening behind him, until he turned a corner and lost sight. Following the events involving Miss Ventura, Capricorn Clark told the court that her formal complaint hadn't mentioned him specifically. Still, he reached out to Mr. Combs, pleading, "I want my life back. You kept me against my will." Defense objected, but the judge allowed the statement to remain on the record. Clark confirmed that there had even been discussions about him returning to work for Mr. Combs, this time as chief of staff. Then, the prosecution presented an email. It was reportedly from Cassie, who wrote that Mr. Combs had threatened to release compromising material involving her and Clark, and also expressed concerns that harm might come to both her and Scott Mescudi. Clark said he didn't recall whether he had responded to that email. The questioning turned to law enforcement contact. Clark said fire investigators had called him after Cootie provided his name. He chose to hang up, stating that he just wanted the entire situation to be over. Clark then recounted more alleged threats. According to him, Mr. Combs made statements involving harming both him and Cassie. Clark estimated he had been threatened at least 50 times. He said that D-Rock had witnessed and supported these comments. When asked about Harve Pierre, the president of Bad Boy Records, Clark said he had told Pierre about the alleged mistreatment. Pierre acknowledged the claim, but then informed Clark he was being terminated, citing an issue with vacation leave. Clark stated he had followed the correct procedures for time off. Clark confirmed he lost all employment benefits, including health coverage, retirement savings, and even his house and car. He claimed Mr. Combs told him he would never work again, and threatened that he would be pushed to harm himself. When asked if he received any job offers, Clark said one fell through and he remained unemployed. He confirmed there had been a settlement agreement in October 2012, but the court cut off further discussion due to a defense objection. Clark stated that he had no additional legal claims pending and eventually returned to work for Mr. Combs. In 2016, he explained it was because no one else would hire him at that point. Around that time, Cassie had signed a new record deal with Epic. The final questions centered on oversight. Clark said all approvals for work involving Cassie went through Mr. Combs. He added that by that point, Cassie was increasingly using substances. When asked if she was still in a relationship with Combs at the time, Clark confirmed she was. Finally, the prosecution asked why Clark had hired an attorney in December 2023. He answered plainly, "I was traumatized by Cassie's civil complaint." Capricorn Clark was questioned further by the defense about his long-standing history with Mr. Combs. He confirmed that he met Combs in 2002, following the 9/11 in 2001. He had submitted his resume on Monster.com and later encountered Combs while The latter was starring in A Raisin in the Sun on Broadway. Clark admitted he was impressed and intrigued by the opportunity to work with him. Their working relationship began during Combs' Vote or Die campaign. Clark's job was to coordinate T-shirt deliveries to celebrities and ensure they showed. "Do you up for photo shoots?" He said they did, thanks to his messaging that Puff wanted them to come. The defense then shifted the topic to a jewelry-related incident. Clark testified that approximately 4 months after the July 4th party Combs hosted in the Hamptons, some jewels went missing. The jewelry, Clark stated, was still on loan from Jacob the jeweler. During that time, Combs ordered lie detector tests in relation to the incident. Clark said Combs' stylist, Mike B., was also tested after a trip to 1440 Broadway for a manicure. When asked if he had reported anything to HR, Clark simply replied, "No." Further questioning revealed that Clark and Combs had discussed him returning to work again, even as recently as April 2024, while Clark was represented by attorney Brian Friedman. Agnifilo pressed Clark about past remarks, including whether he once said he had a crush on Combs. The prosecution objected, and after some procedural discussion, the judge called for a sidebar. The defense then probed Clark's views on Cassie, suggesting Clark thought she wasn't good for Combs, because their relationship was toxic. Clark agreed. He also recalled a period living in the Bronx and expressed disdain for the experience. Finally, the defense circled back to drug use, asking whether Combs was using drugs when Clark first met him. Clark responded that he had seen him take ecstasy at Daddy's house recording studio and confirmed that it escalated over time. The judge opened the session, calling the jury in. Combs' lawyer, Agnifilo, started questioning about a park visit, specifically Tavern on the Green. It came up that parking happened there, and earlier in the day there was a run-in with Nas. Later, the judge mentioned a defense argument from the weekend about an album's relevance. Ms. Shapiro confirmed it, but the prosecutor pointed out Ms. Ventura seemed uncomfortable, arms crossed. The judge decided to bring the witness back, Agnifilo, then asked about someone's personality, how they went from being a sweet model to a feisty girlfriend. The response was that she was beautiful and talented, but not quite there, just a matter of personal taste. Agnifilo also checked if there was a sense of being a good employee for Combs. The answer was yes, though Combs never used the word awesome. Hard work was emphasized, harder than anyone else apparently. Things got emotional when it came to what was learned from Combs, especially about breaking barriers for Black people in business. Tears welled up, but when Agnifilo offered a break, it was brushed off as just being a lot to handle. The judge called a break anyway. After the break, the prosecutor brought up communications between the witness and Ms. Ventura, saying nothing firsthand was seen. Agnifilo pushed back, pointing out logistics and photo shoots were discussed, and the witness had already testified to that directly. Agnifilo then asked about Ms. Ventura, spinning, referencing a statement about Lori Ann Gibson being there. It was clarified as a misunderstanding, with the first meeting with Ms. Ventura happening alongside Ryan Leslie. Agnifilo moved to a time the witness was let go for 3 weeks. It happened after working on Combs' 35th birthday at Cipriani, handling the celebrity list between 2004 and 2006. The return wasn't as a personal assistant, but as a liaison. Pay came up too, $65,000 with Combs, then $90,000 at Jive. The return to Combs happened after securing big records for R. Kelly, which impressed Combs enough to bring the witness back for Sean Jean for Women. With the jury out, the judge overruled an objection on DNA questions for Inspector Jimenez. The prosecutor asked for a longer break, noting the case was ahead of schedule and might wrap in 5 weeks instead of 6. Agnifilo, Combs' lawyer, started by asking how burner phones were known about. The answer came that growing up in Los Angeles provided that knowledge. Then, Agnifilo mentioned Combs being at an orphanage in Almaty, Kazakhstan, in December 2011. The response clarified that it was actually Russia, based on what was heard. Next, Agnifilo asked how Combs got into a building. The reply was that a security guard got fired, a black guy, younger than 35, though the name wasn't recalled. The questioning moved to an incident involving a firearm. Agnifilo asked what Combs was doing with it. The answer was that Combs had it in his hand but wasn't pointing it at anyone, though a previous statement to the government mentioned Combs pointing or waving it around, which was deemed more accurate. Agnifilo then shifted to Cassie's talent, comparing it to Whitney Houston and Mariah Carey. The response was that Cassie was more of a studio musician who needed things balanced, had performed live a few times, but wasn't the greatest. When asked if she was a hard worker, the answer was, at times. Agnifilo brought up King of Hearts, asking about its vibe. It was described as fresh, something Combs liked. Cassie had a green wig, but when Agnifilo asked about an email to admit as evidence, the witness didn't recall it, and the prosecution noted a sealing issue. Next, Agnifilo asked what Ms. Ventura and Kid Cudi were doing after Thanksgiving. The answer was they were getting to know each other, and a burner phone was bought for her at Best Buy with the advice that it shouldn't be done on a bad boy phone. Agnifilo then brought up running into Cassie after her new epic deal. She was dressed like David Bowie for a photo shoot at a house where a mini-movie was written and shot for the project. When asked about Official Girl, the response was that it was a super cute video. Agnifilo pressed on Cassie's work ethic, asking when she wasn't a hard worker. The reply was that she preferred being with her boyfriend, and after moving to LA following Kim having twins around 2009, more of her relationship with Combs became visible. Agnifilo asked if Combs supported her career. The answer was yes, providing stylists and musicians to make her a star, though she got more help than others like Young Jock, a group from Atlanta, and French Montana. Finally, Agnifilo referenced a 2012 recording session for Cassie with Mario Winans for the chairman, meaning Combs. When asked when it was learned that Cassie was dating Kid Cudi, the reply was fall 2011, after picking her up. Agnifilo, Combs' lawyer, brought up a message written to Combs on February 28, 2015, saying, "One day you'll forgive me. Anyway, be well, XX." The response confirmed it was written. Agnifilo then pointed out another part. "Your grace, period to be mad at me has surpassed the agreed time, LOL. You wrote that?" The answer was a simple, "Yes, sir." Next, Agnifilo asked where street clothes were changed into. The reply was, "In my closet." He then suggested it was to prevent Combs from doing something impulsive, but the response clarified it was because Combs said he didn't care about the reluctance to go. Agnifilo asked if Kid Cudi's door was checked to see if it could be accessed. The answer was no, as attention was elsewhere, focused on planning the next move and hoping Cudi wasn't there. When asked if Cassie had two rooms, no clear confirmation was given. The questioning moved to whether Lauren London was on a call with Cassie and Cudi. The response was no, only part of the time, with a voice crack, adding a desire for someone to know the location. When asked what was told, the reply was, "I'm scared of mountain lions." Agnifilo noted Lauren and Combs were friends for years after, which was acknowledged. Agnifilo asked about hanging up on a fire inspector, and it was confirmed. On a vacation, it was with Rihanna. After being fired, the next job was with 50 Cent. Arranged by Chris Lighty, Agnifilo pressed if it was 100% certain a call was made to say Combs had a gun. The answer was yes, said quickly to avoid Combs seeing the phone. It was also noted that Cudi took Cassie to one room while she had another. Finally, Agnifilo asked where Cassie was picked up and taken. The response was Cudi's house, with ADT present, then Combs' house where Combs was seen kicking Cassie, even in the street, which was confirmed. Capricorn Clark stated being blacklisted, prompting an objection from Agnifilo, which the judge sustained. The AUSA asked why Clark returned to work for Combs, with the response being to show indispensability due to Combs' power in the business. The AUSA then asked why a meeting occurred, answered as an effort to get life back. The AUSA inquired about a job with Chris Lighty, where Clark explained Lighty died the day before the start, and Interscope later told Clark to leave Combs alone. Agnifilo objected, and the judge sustained it. In the kidnapping context, the AUSA asked if Combs carried a gun, confirmed by Clark with a yes. The judge then addressed the jurors, apologizing for the extended time, thanking them, and adjourning until tomorrow with an all rise as jurors left. Agnifilo asked if Clark wanted to work for Combs when they met, with Clark saying they discussed it, and Agnifilo had nothing further. The AUSA asked how much Combs was required to pay, leading to a sidebar. Agnifilo asked Clark to read a note aloud. "She was never my friend. She wanted me gone, I realized." When asked if Cassie wanted Clark gone, an emotional, "Sorry, this is complicated for me. I felt that I was Puff's protector," followed. Clark later felt alone as things worsened, aiming to maintain professionalism and inspire. Agnifilo noted a few more minutes would end the day, thanking Clark. He asked about great work with Cassie in 2016 and 2017, with Clark believing so and confirming Cassie had addiction issues. Agnifilo asked if it hurt that Combs only took Clark back because Cassie wanted it, with Clark affirming, citing no parents, an autistic son, and higher stakes. The judge allowed a sidebar after Agnifilo requested to speak with the government. Finally, Agnifilo asked about a short movie made with someone, identified as Love a Loser. When asked if Clark wrote to Combs asking for forgiveness, the reply was a desire to reclaim life, dreams, and competency.